Share this article. Tweet Kevin Duke October 27, 2017. Video by Armin Balg. We here at motorcycle.com are a bit spoilt. You see, stepping up to the top shelf of a manufacturer's lineup for us is as simple as asking for it. No credit check required, so it's easy for us to love pricey KTM Super Dukes and MV Agusta Brutales. However, there are much more affordable ways to get into the naked sport bike market, and here's a trio of fun, fast and cool ways to do it for around 8 or 9 grand. Get the Flash player to see this player. Truly, this collection of roadsters, Suzuki's gsx-s750, Kawasaki's z900 and Aprilia's new Shiver 900 has all the performance most anyone needs to frolic in the canyons, let alone stay ahead of traffic, and agreeable ergonomics enable versatility for everything from commuting to touring. While this threesome isn't a perfect fit in terms of specifications, they are priced in the same range and offer similar sporty performance. Related 2018 Suzuki gsx-s750 First Ride Review. Related 2017 Kawasaki z900 First Ride Review. Two bikes are conspicuous by their absence: the triple threats of Yamaha's updated FZ09 $8,999 and Triumph Street Triple S $9,900. Sadly, we were unable to wrangle them in time for this comparison, but we intend to assemble the two triples when available and will include a winner of this shootout to find out how they stack up with each other. Related 2017 Yamaha FZ09 First Ride Review. Cost: Suzuki's gsx-s750 is the cheapest way to get 100 rear-wheel horsepower, with an MSRP of just $8,299 for the base version we tested. Anti-lock brakes are available only on the blacked-out gsx-s750Z, which retails at $8,899, $100 more than the ABS-equipped Z900 in this test. Aprilia's Shiver 900 adds Italian flair and an elevated price, retailing at $9,399 with its standard ABS. Related 2018 Aprilia Shiver 900 First Ride Review. The standard gsx-s750 lacks ABS but has the lowest MSRP in this test at $8,299. We think it's a really attractive motorcycle considering its price. However, a non-ABS Z900 retails for just $8,399 and proudly offers more power from its bigger engine. Style: like any vehicular purchase, a consumer's decision to buy a motorbike depends largely on how it strikes their eyes. We think this trio nicely pulls off charming profiles despite their sub-$10,000 price tags, but how each is alluring depends largely on the tastes of the beholder. Suzuki's gsx-s appeals best to those with more traditional tastes, displaying clean lines and subtle accents within a vivid blue primary color. At the opposite end of conservatism is the polarizing Z900, with the fresher visage that probably speaks loudest to younger riders. The bold and edgy Z900 looks especially sharp with its green frame highlighting its chassis and the green pinstriping on its wheels. What looks like aluminum lower frame elements are actually plastic covers, similar to what Yamaha did with its FZ07. The Shiver falls somewhere in between, with its red-accented trellis frame, shock spring, cylinder head covers and wheel stripes adding considerable pop within a relatively calm colorway. Dual undertail mufflers are visually interesting even if they frustrate mass centralization efforts. In terms of looks and finish, the Aprilia is unmatched, opines Ed. Ryan Adams. It feels like a much more expensive motorcycle than it is. Ergo's naked sport bikes like these are a more rational choice for a street sport bike than the committed riding positions of super sport-style sport bikes, requiring much less folding of a rider's body parts. Of this trio, the Shiver offers up the least demanding position, with a generous amount of legroom from its comfy 32.0-inch seat height and a moderate reach to the handlebars. The gsx-s isn't far behind, with a slightly tighter knee bend forced by higher foot pegs but a nicely plush saddle. The Shiver is blessed with semi-exotic Euro styling and offers a comfortable, open riding position. Kawasaki fitted its Z900 with a thin seat that provides the shortest reach to the ground at just 31.3 inches, nearly a full inch lower than the Suzuki's. Our testers griped about its resultant deficit of padding and the tight knee bend forced by the low seat. Taller riders would be well served by ordering up the ErgoFit Extended Reach Seat $179.99 from Kawi Accessory Catalog, as it offers an extra inch of legroom along with a snazzy carbon fiber pattern and embroidered Kawasaki logo. Power plants: Aprilia's newly enlarged V-twin in its Shiver Endorse Duo 900s has a welcome boost in output over the previous 750cc versions, but its 896cc motor is fairly tame and not quite enough to make the Shiver feel like an updated version of Noella's former 1000cc V-twin Tuono. Horsepower peaks at a modest 82 ponies when measured on our Motorworks dyno. The gsx-s750 holds its smaller head fairly high in this class, offering nearly 100 rear-wheel horsepower by revving higher than its bigger rivals. An impressively flat torque curve makes the Suzuki feel stronger than it actually is, and its peak twist amazingly comes up just 2.6 lb-ft short of the 146cc larger shiver. Minor abruptness when reapplying throttle is our only beef about this overachieving power plant. Although down 150,200 cc in engine displacement, the gsx-s750 spits out the second highest horsepower number in this comparo and nearly matches the peak torque of the V-twin Aprilia. Power hogs will gravitate to the 948cc Z900, which cranks out an impressive 115.6 horsepower at a reasonably low 9,800 revolutions per minute. It's relatively docile when ridden with a mild wrist, but it goes on a tear at WFO above 7,000 revolutions per minute. Second gear clutch assisted wheelies ensue. I enjoyed the extra power when compared back-to-back with these other motorcycles, Adams states, to which we all agreed. The Z900 is the clear winner in terms of power, making more of it at every RPM in its rev range. The Shiver's newly enlarged 896cc V-twin gets handily out-torqued by the 4-cylinder Z thanks to the Kawi Extra 52cc. The Suzuki's motor, despite being significantly outgunned in terms of displacement, rarely feels a step behind its larger rivals when out on the road. Features. Along with the obvious distinctions between divergent power plants, the breadth of features offered among this trio is where they further diverge from each other. The gsx-s is fairly basic, with a traction control system and a slipper clutch amounting to most of its highlights, along with radial-mount front brakes with 4-piston calipers on its inverted fork. It lacks ride modes, adjustable suspension damping and an assist-style clutch, and it's the only one of the group to use a steel swing arm instead of lighter aluminum swingers on the 900s. Kudos to Suzuki for allowing TC to be disabled and for allowing it to remain switched off when the engine is restarted. A TC light notifies the rider it has been disabled. The Suzuki's instrument panel is highly readable, with a large GPI and digital speedo. A large bar graph tach resides up top. The Kawasaki adds rebound damping adjustability to both ends of the suspension equation, along with the preload adjustments of the Suzuki. It's equipped with a trip computer but lacks traction control, ride modes and radially mounted front brakes. Our tester was fitted with the optional ABS system. All three bikes are equipped with clocks, fuel gauges and gear position indicators. The pricier Shiver is, relatively speaking, slathered in features, including TC, ride modes, a steel aluminum frame, and a lovely TFT instrument cluster with a trip computer and ambient temperature gauge. It's also the only bike here that has 3-way preload, compression, rebound adjustable suspension. Optional is the Aprilia multimedia platform that allows the instruments to sync with a smartphone. ABS is standard and can be disabled if desired, unlike the Kawi ABS. Yeah, a good set of gauges doesn't have to be TFT, but the latest examples, like this one borrowed from Aprilia's RSV4 in Tuono, are beautiful and readable while adding a touch of high-end class. Ride on. While the aforementioned details play a part in a prospective buyer's decision, it all pales next to what is offered by the riding experience of each bike. Despite the nearly 200cc gap in engine displacements, the 4-cylinder Japanese duo feel remarkably similar, aside from the amount of legroom offered by their seating positions. Their weights are nearly identical, with the Suzuki's 467 pounds fully fueled number just undercutting the Kawi 469 pounds figure. However, the Z900 holds a bit more fuel in its tank, 4.5 gallons versus 4.22, and it carries ABS hardware, so it's actually the Z that weighs the least, even if it's just a couple of pounds. The lightest bikes in this test book and the heaviest one. The Shiver gave extra work for our scales, pressing down with 500 pounds, well, 499 per force. It feels obviously heavier when picking it up off its side stand, and it can't blame a generous fuel capacity for its extra lard, as Aprilia rates its tank at just 4.0 gallons, which may inhibit the Shiver during sport touring duties. During our video shoot ride day, which is notoriously a worst-case scenario for fuel economy, our Shiver's low fuel light and trip meter countdown activated as it traveled just 80 miles. The Kawi sucked in nearly as much fuel but has a half-gallon larger tank. Meanwhile, the Suzuki burned a half-gallon less pump juice than the Aprilia to lead the fuel economy sweepstakes. The gsx-s pleases ears with its snarling intake growl that surely gives pride to an anonymous acoustics engineer working in Hamamoto. The Z also sounds really good, although lacking some of the invigorating rasp of the gsx-s. The shiver V-twin is an entirely different animal, spitting out a bass-heavy drumbeat distinct from its higher-pitched rivals. The shiver distinguishes itself in both its power plant and its hybrid steel-aluminum chassis. With the laziest rake angle and longest wheelbase, it's not quite as agile as its Japanese rivals, but lightweight wheels borrowed from the Tuono help it respond quickly to steering inputs. The Suzuki has the heaviest clutch pull but with a wider engagement zone than the light-action slip-assist clutch in the Z. The shiver counters the Japanese cable clutches with the hydraulic slipper unit to ease pull efforts, a purported 15% compared to the defunct shiver 750. No notable foibles are discovered in typical use around town, aside from the Aprilia's gearbox sometimes being reluctant to find neutral when stopped. Each machine proves easy to handle, as all decent sporting standards should. The Suzuki's power deficit is barely noticed thanks for its flat torque curve and the slickest shifting tranny of the group. Despite the 750's lack of displacement, notes Adams, while riding these motorcycles back-to-back, it was clear the gsx-s was not outclassed in the least. Don't think the Suzuki's undersized engine is an impediment to quickly ripping up a canyon road. It has the smallest power plant but still made very usable power as long as you kept the motor spinning in the higher revs, FNG Brent Jasvinsky notes. He also appreciated the knurled foot pegs with raised edges that provided more grip than the rubber-covered pegs of its classmates. Long peg feelers rarely graze the ground when leaned over in corners. The shiver's lower revving twin chuffs out torque in a smooth and satisfying manner, even if swapping transmission cogs requires more effort than the others. With the only V-twin of the group, which obviously did rev is higher, make as much horsepower as the Kawi or Zuck, it made up for it with its low-end torque, elaborates Jasvinsky. This made the bike fun to ride around town and in the tight canyon twisties. It has an infectious exhaust bark when you wrap the throttle, as well as a nice diesel pop that adds sporty character. But in terms of pure sport, it's the Z900 that takes top honors. The Kawi makes fun, grin-inducing power all the way up to 10k RPM, Jas gushes. It has great mid-range power, and a feather of the clutch lofts the front end predictably. All three of these bikes have solid handling characteristics, with predictable turn-in responses and adroit capabilities when leaned over and hustled down a twisty road. The Ka and SUZ again feel quite similar, which should be no surprise considering their identical trail figures 4.1 inches and nearly identical wheelbases 57.1 inches versus 57.2, respectively. The Z has the steepest rake angle of the group at 24.5 degrees, but it didn't tip into corners appreciably quicker than the 25.2 degrees Suzuki. I thought the Suzuki had the quickest turn-in, Adams counters, although it didn't feel quite as composed in corners as its competitors. Specs aside, it wasn't clear to our test crew which bike has a handling advantage, as all three provided as much performance as we dared when ridden in the confines of the street. Your speed in the corners will be defined by your performance capabilities more than what's available from these motorbikes. Jasvinsky, our tallest tester at 6 foot 1 inch and pictured here, gave the shiver kudos for the roomiest seat of this trio and for its comfortably large pillion pad with the only passenger grab handles in this trio, the Z9 and gsx-s employ seat straps that could also double for cargo tee-down points. He adds the shiver is a solid performing bike that doesn't have any obvious shortcomings. The fully adjustable suspension of the shiver keeps its weight nicely damped, and I rate it best of this group, despite the non-linkage rear shock. However, we must give props to the engineers at Kawi and Suzy for dialing in proper settings in their less adjustable suspenders, which none of our testers griped about. Brakes were a slightly different story, with our riders preferring the gsx-s's radial-mount 4-piston calipers for their richer initial bite and feedback. Even though it is the only bike without ABS, it has the best brakes of the group, hands down, Jas reports. They have strong initial bite with predictable and linear braking feel as more pressure is applied. I only ever needed one finger on the lever. The Suzuki has our fave brakes in this group. With radial-mount 4-piston calipers, braided steel lines and a sophisticated ABS system, the shiver appears as if it should win the battle of the brakes. However, they require a fairly hefty squeeze to access their full power and were rated at the tail end of this group. The Kawi brakes are decent but not great. The 4-piston front calipers offer good power, despite being the only non-radial set in this trio and having the smallest rotors 300 mm. Our beef with the brakes is mostly with its anti-lock system. The Z900's brakes worked great so long as their application was smooth, Jas elaborates. However, under heavy or abrupt braking, the ABS initiated a little too eagerly with somewhat disconcerting modulation at the lever. Perhaps Koweab's system isn't quite as advanced as the shivers, on which we didn't note a problem with premature intervention. We would have liked to have tried disabling the Z-Zebs to find out how differently the brakes performed, but there is no way to switch it off like is possible on the shiver. And the verdict is, this shootout proved to be far more competitive than the spec charts and our predictions initially indicated, as we became enamored with each bike for their versatility and all-around performance. At the tail end of our scorecard by just a fraction is the still estimable Shiver 900, which primarily got penalized by having the highest price, the heaviest weight, and the least amount of horsepower. Taking those objective parameters out of the picture and relying on our subjective scores, the Shiv actually finished a very close second to the victor of this comparison. In the final tally on our scorecard, there was just a 3.15% gap between first and last places. After attending the launch of the Shiver 900, I was certain it would have held its own a bit better against the two Japanese competitors, Adams summarizes. I thoroughly enjoyed the low-end torque from the 90-degree V-twin, however, the party was always over too soon in terms of power. For the price, and depending on your plans for the motorcycle, it comes in a close second for me to the Z900 as a great everything motorcycle, as long as everything doesn't include pumping out better horsepower numbers. Taking the runner-up spot here is the overachieving gsx-s750, which delighted us with its fun to-ride nature and its overall competency in doing everything we asked of it. The Suzuki is a great platform for a newer rider looking to get into sportier riding without sacrificing comfort or around-town maneuverability, Jaspinski states. It's remarkable the gsx is rated so highly, given its significant deficit in engine size. And that leaves us with the winner of this shootout, Kawasaki's alluring and value-packed Z900. It's a stunning performance bargain, especially considering the non-ABS version retails for just $8,399, and it's further validation for choosing it as the best standard of 2017 in our annual MOBO Awards. The Z900 is not only a better motorcycle than the Z800 it replaces, it's also a better bike than the Z1000 it also replaces. Its performance-per-dollar ratio is as good as it gets. The Kawasaki completes the best all-around package with its 115 horses, radical styling, and good cornering stability, Adams raves. If it weren't for the too low seat height in relation to the foot pegs and the early intervention of ABS, we wouldn't have anything to complain about. Scroll down to see our full scorecard. 2017 Kawasaki Z900 highs unbeatable bang for the buck, strong but smooth power, bewitching style, size cramped legroom, average brakes, mediocre passenger accommodations. 2017 Suzuki gsx-s750 highs overachieving motor, best brakes and seat restrained styling, size only $100 cheaper than non-ABS Z900, the same weight as Z900, restrained styling. 2017 Aprilia Shiver 900 highs high levels of fit and finish, GTL level accommodations, distinctive V-twin power plant, size low, fuel range underwhelming, power hefty.